My cousins were laughing while my grandfather's coffin was still in the room. Music echoed faintly from the reception hall next door, their private celebration of life, or what I called the after-party for greed. They were already drinking to their new fortunes before the dirt had even touched his grave. Preston stood at the center, glass raised high, expensive smile wider than ever. "Grandpa would have wanted us to celebrate," he said, as the others clinked their glasses and laughed. No, I thought. Grandpa would have wanted respect. But respect was the only thing no one inherited today. I stayed back near the edge of the hall, still in front of the photo of the man who'd built everything they now flaunted. Roland Whitfield, a name that meant power, money, and legacy. But to me, he wasn't a tycoon. He was the old man who used to beat me at chess every Sunday and still wink when I lost. He used to say, "A man's real worth isn't in his money, Adam. It's in the way he handles being underestimated." I didn't realize then that he was talking about this day. The lawyer, a quiet man with silver hair and a nervous voice, stepped up to the podium with the will in his hands. The crowd hushed, though the tension in the air was thick enough to touch. He began reading, and every word felt like a verdict. "To my grandson, Preston Whitfield, I leave $42 million and majority shares of Whitfield Shipping." Preston's grin stretched even wider. His sister Mallory gasped, pretending to be shocked. She didn't even look surprised when her name followed next. The same inheritance, same fortune. Their parents, Uncle Vernon and Aunt Celeste, exchanged a look that said finally. It wasn't grief they felt. It was victory. Then the lawyer paused. His tone softened when he spoke again. "And to Adam Whitfield." The silence that followed was long enough for every eye in that hall to find me. He walked toward me, holding a small envelope, unsealed and slightly wrinkled. No gold ribbon, no thick folder. Just one envelope. Inside, a single plane ticket. One way, destination, Fairview Point. I could hear whispers before he even finished speaking. Preston chuckled under his breath. "Hope it's at least first class." Someone laughed louder. The room filled with smug smiles, pitying glances, quiet mockery. But I just stared at that ticket, at my name printed neatly beside a place I'd never heard of. And on the top corner, in my grandfather's handwriting, faded but unmistakable, were 6 words. "For the move no one sees coming." That was all. No property, no shares, no money. Just a plane ticket and a sentence that made no sense. I felt 100 eyes waiting for me to break, to get angry, to look embarrassed. But instead I folded the ticket carefully, slipped it into my pocket, and looked back at my grandfather's photo. Everyone else saw a teacher who'd failed the family's expectations. But he had seen something different. He'd once told me, "The board may look empty, Adam, but every piece has purpose." And for the first time that day, I felt something stronger than shame. A pull, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a loss at all. As the laughter resumed, I stepped outside. The rain had started again, soft and slow, the kind that makes the world quiet. The marble steps glistened beneath the storm, and I stood there, holding the envelope against my chest, Fairview Point. Whatever it was, I knew it wasn't random. Grandpa never made random moves. And as thunder rolled in the distance, I finally understood. This wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of mine. The day after the funeral, my cousins were already on the news. "Whitfield heirs take control of family empire," the headline read. Their smiles plastered across the screen like they'd earned something more than a last name. I switched the TV off before the interview even started. My apartment felt smaller that morning. The same flickering light in the kitchen, the same cracked window that let the winter wind creep in. I poured myself stale coffee, sat by the window, and unfolded the plane ticket again. Fairview Point. No state, no airport code, no date. Just my name and those 6 words. For the move no one sees coming. I turned it over, looking for some hidden message, a code, anything. Nothing. The old clock on the wall ticked, loud in the silence. Outside, the city was already awake. Car horns, barking dogs, people running late for jobs they hated. It was my kind of world. Predictable, simple, forgettable. I grabbed my coat and headed to Lincoln High, where I'd been teaching history for 6 years. Most of my students didn't care about the American Revolution or ancient trade routes, but I still showed up every morning like it mattered. Because it did. Not to the world maybe, but to me. "Morning, Mr. Whitfield," one of my seniors called out as I walked in. I smiled faintly. "Morning, Maya. Test on Reconstruction today. No mercy." The class groaned. As they scribbled on their papers, I looked at the map pinned to the wall. Old, faded, corners torn. Fairview Point wasn't marked anywhere, but my mind kept drifting to it. Why that name? Why a plane ticket? Grandpa had been deliberate in everything he did. He'd once told me, if you ever find yourself holding something that makes no sense, it's probably because it isn't meant to yet. At lunch, I sat in the empty staff room. The ceiling stain above me still looked like the state of Texas if you stared long enough. Somehow that made me laugh. The world changes, but my ceiling doesn't. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. No message, just a voicemail. When I played it, I almost dropped the phone. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Mr. Garrison, my grandfather's former assistant. Adam, he said, voice trembling a little. If you got what I think you did, you need to come to Fairview Point. Don't wait too long. He left something there, for you only. The line cut before I could hit call back. No number saved. No return contact. I sat frozen for a full minute. He knew about the ticket. He expected me to get it. I looked again at that folded slip of paper, the one everyone laughed at. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was the one thing they couldn't buy. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my grandfather smiling across a chessboard, his voice echoing in my mind. The strongest move is the one they never see coming. By sunrise, my decision was made. I packed a single bag, grabbed the envelope, and locked my apartment door. I didn't know where Fairview Point was, but I knew I had to find out, because if Roland Whitfield wanted to teach me one last lesson, I wasn't going to miss the class. The airport clerk looked at the ticket like it was a puzzle. Fairview Point, she repeated. There's no flight under that name. I pointed at the print. It's right there. She tilted her head. This route doesn't exist in our system, sir, but... She hesitated, typing again. There's an old private terminal 30 miles north that used to serve Whitfield shipments. Maybe it's connected. Whitfield, of course. An hour later, I was in a taxi rolling through rain-slicked roads. The city shrinking behind me. The driver didn't talk much. Just the hum of the tires and the sound of wipers scraping the windshield. When we finally pulled up, I saw it. A small airstrip hidden behind rusted gates and overgrown grass. A single hangar stood there, its paint peeling, its lights flickering weakly against the gray sky. I stepped out, holding my ticket tight. The wind carried the smell of salt and metal, the same scent that clung to my grandfather's old office when I was a boy. Before I could even knock on the gate, it creaked open on its own. A man stepped out, late 60s, heavy coat, gray hair, Adam Whitfield. His voice cracked like it hadn't been used in years. Yes, I said cautiously. And you are? He smiled faintly. You probably don't remember me. Garrison, your grandfather's assistant. It took me a moment. A voice from the voicemail. I didn't think you'd actually come, he said. Most people wouldn't follow a ticket to nowhere. I need to know why he sent me, I replied. Garrison's eyes softened. Then you came to the right place. He motioned me inside. The hangar smelled like dust and time. Inside, an old twin-engine plane rested beneath a tarp, its silver body dull but intact. The name on the side still read Whitfield Industries. Garrison walked over to a small wooden desk in the corner and pulled out a locked metal box. He told me to give you this if you ever showed up, he said quietly. He made me swear not to open it. He placed it in my hands. It was heavier than it looked. The lock had an engraving, the same crest that sealed my envelope from the funeral. Do you know what's inside? I asked. Garrison shook his head. Only that he said it's not about money. It's about truth. I turned the box slowly in my hands. The metal was cold, edges smooth, initials carved into the side. R.W. There was a single keyhole, but no key. He said you'd know how to open it. Garrison murmured. I almost laughed. I don't even know what I'm looking for. He smiled faintly. That's what your grandfather liked about you. You never looked for things to take, only things to understand. Outside, thunder rolled over the airfield again. I sat the box on the table, ran my fingers over the crest and felt a sudden click. The top sprang open slightly, not because of a key, but because a hidden mechanism inside the emblem had responded to my touch. Inside was a small stack of papers, yellowed with age, and a single photograph. My father and grandfather standing beside a construction site. On the back, written in my grandfather's handwriting, were 5 words. Fairview Point and where it began. I frowned. What began? Garrison stayed silent. His expression was heavy. You'll have to see it yourself. He handed me an old car key. tied to a tag with faded letters, Cabin 3, Whitfield Dock. "That's where he wanted you to go next," he said. "It's been locked since the day he died." The wind howled outside the hangar. Every instinct told me to turn back, go home, forget this strange trail. But I couldn't. Because for the first time since that funeral, I felt like my grandfather was still making the next move, and I was finally starting to see the board. The road to Whitfield Dock was narrower than I expected, winding along the edge of the river like it didn't want visitors. Fog clung to the ground, curling around the tires of my grandfather's old sedan, which Garrison had insisted I drive. The key felt heavier in my pocket with every mile. Cabin 3, locked since the day Grandpa died. I reached the dock as the sun began to set, throwing orange streaks over the water. Everything was quiet, too quiet. The docks creaked under the weight of memory, old wood swollen from years of rain. Fishing boats sat idle, their paint peeling, tied loosely to rusted chains. And then I saw it, the cabin. Cabin 3, small, square, gray wood, almost blending into the mist. A single lantern hung by the door, swinging slightly as though stirred by an invisible hand. I approached slowly, the metal key pressed against the lock. It slid in smoothly. Click. The door opened, groaning like it hadn't moved in decades. Inside, the air smelled of cedar, dust, and a faint trace of cigar smoke. Stacks of journals were piled along the walls, bound in leather, edges frayed. Maps of waterways, shipping routes, and what looked like detailed blueprints of factories lined one table. And there, on the center desk, sat a small wooden box, delicate, almost fragile, with the same Whitfield crest engraved on its lid. I sat in front of it, hands trembling slightly. Grandfather's handwriting was everywhere, notes taped to the walls, margins filled with calculations. Reminders. Adam will see this when the time is right. I opened the wooden box. Inside were several objects. A small compass worn and scratched, a brass key with intricate carvings, a letter yellowed and brittle. I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Adam, if you're reading this, you've followed my first move. The next steps will test everything you think you know. Trust your instincts, not what your cousins believe. The true empire isn't what they see. Grandpa." I stared at the words, my heart hammering. The true empire. My cousins laughed at me at the funeral, but this was a world they didn't even know existed. The compass felt warm in my hand. The key heavy. I tucked both into my jacket and glanced around the cabin. Everything was perfectly ordinary. But I knew perfectly ordinary was the disguise my grandfather loved. I noticed a trapdoor beneath the desk, nearly invisible beneath a faded rug. The brass key fit the lock perfectly. I hesitated. For a moment, doubt gnawed at me. What if this was just another cruel trick? Then I thought about the funeral, the plane ticket, the voicemail from Garrison. No, this wasn't a trick. It was an invitation. I turned the key. The lock clicked, the door shifted, and a narrow stairway descended into darkness. I felt the chill hit me immediately. The air smelled of salt, rust, and something older, something alive with secrets. My flashlight barely cut through the black. Each step echoed like a drumbeat in an empty cathedral. Halfway down, I stumbled upon crates stacked high, marked with faded shipping labels, Whitfield Industries, confidential. Inside, blueprints, documents, and ledgers, plans for factories, docks, shipping routes. Every line, every number, a puzzle piece my cousins had never seen, never tried to understand. And then I found it. A single chest, large, iron-bound, with a complex lock, the kind that could survive decades untouched. I knelt, running my fingers over the metal. The compass vibrated slightly in my pocket as if urging me forward. The brass key fit the final lock. Click. Inside the chest were models, miniature ships, warehouses, factories, all meticulously crafted. And on the top, a single note. The empire is not in the money, Adam. It's in the strategy. The move no one sees coming is yours to make. I felt it then. The weight of every decision my grandfather had ever made. Every secret he had kept. All of it led here, to this dock, to this room, to me. Outside, the fog thickened, hiding the river. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard laughter. Not the laughter of my cousins. Something older. Something that knew I'd finally arrived. I leaned back against the wall, chest heaving. The model spread before me like a battlefield. The storm outside the dock mirrored the storm in my mind. Every instinct screamed to stop, to retreat. But I couldn't. Because this was my move. The move my grandfather had been waiting for all along. The models on the table weren't just toys. They were a map of an empire hidden in plain sight. Every ship, every warehouse, every dock, precise, calculated, intentional. I traced my finger along the routes, following lines that made no sense until I remembered my grandfather's voice. The strongest move is the one they never see coming. This was his chessboard, and I had just been handed the first piece. I turned over another note, tucked under the largest model ship. Your cousins believe the empire is theirs. Let them watch while you learn to move it without their knowledge. First lesson, patience. Patience. I'd spent years as a teacher, learning how to guide students without forcing them, how to anticipate mistakes before they happened. Apparently, Grandpa wanted me to apply the same skill here. Outside, the fog pressed against the dock. I could almost hear the city beyond, the life I had left behind. My cousins were probably sipping champagne, checking stock updates, celebrating millions that were nothing compared to what lay before me. I took a deep breath, picked up the miniature warehouses, and began rearranging them according to patterns hidden in the blueprints. Every adjustment revealed something new. A hidden dock here, a storage route there. By the time I stepped back, I understood. This wasn't about money. It was about control, about vision, about knowing the landscape better than anyone else. Then I heard it, the faintest click from the far side of the dock. I froze. Footsteps? A door opening? I slipped the models back into place and crept toward the stairs leading to the upper cabin. Through the fog, I saw a figure moving near the water. My cousins? No, they would never have found this place yet. The figure was tall, deliberate, and it was watching me. I ducked behind a crate, holding my breath. The person didn't move past a certain point. It was as if they were studying something, or someone. My hand brushed against the compass in my pocket. It vibrated lightly, not a coincidence. Grandfather had left a trail, a breadcrumb. I needed to follow it. I returned to the models, studying them again. A particular warehouse caught my attention. Its miniature doors were slightly misaligned, almost imperceptible. I knelt and examined the blueprint taped beneath it. A series of numbers and coordinates written in Grandpa's tight script. Dock 7 midnight alone. Midnight alone. The first real test. The first move in the game. I realized then, this wasn't just about discovery. It was about proving myself. About stepping into a role my cousins could never understand. They had wealth. I had strategy. They had arrogance. I had insight. I packed a small bag, flashlight, compass, maps, the models I could carry without damaging them. I took a final look around the cabin. The storm outside had grown, thunder rolling across the river like applause. And then I heard it again, the same footsteps, slower this time, closer. I slipped out a side door toward the dock, the compass now glowing faintly in my hand. Every step echoed. Every shadow could be someone, or something. And I knew this. The first move would not be easy. It would test me, isolate me, push me to the edge of what I thought I knew. But I was ready. Because if my grandfather had built a challenge like this, he had made it for me. The fog clung to Dock 7 like a living thing, curling around my ankles, slipping through the gaps in the wood. Every step I took echoed against the water, sharp and deliberate. The compass in my pocket vibrated slightly, almost urging me forward. I felt my grandfather's presence in the quiet, a reminder that the first move was mine and mine alone. Ahead, a massive warehouse loomed out of the mist. Its doors were enormous, made of rusted steel, locked tight. From the outside, it looked abandoned, forgotten. But I knew better. I approached slowly, hands ready to push the heavy doors. The compass glowed brighter, faint golden light spilling from my pocket onto the wood beneath me. It wasn't just guiding me, it was signaling. The key from the cabin, my grandfather's final gift, fit perfectly into the massive lock. Click! The doors groaned as I pushed them open. Inside, the air was damp and heavy, tinged with oil and machinery. Rows of crates stretched into the shadows, stacked meticulously, labeled only with cryptic codes in my grandfather's handwriting. This wasn't a storage room. It was a vault of secrets, a skeleton of an empire hidden from the world. I moved cautiously, the flashlight cutting a thin swath of light through the darkness. Every crate, every label, every carefully organized stack whispered strategy. And then I saw it. A large map sprawled across a table at the center of the warehouse. Not a normal map. It was a blueprint of the city, the river, every dock and facility Whitfield Shipping had ever owned. And overlaid on it were symbols, tiny marks, almost invisible. I bent closer. Each symbol represented a secret facility, a hidden route, a piece of the empire my cousins had never dreamed existed. Every number, every line, perfectly calculated. Grandfather hadn't just left money. He'd left control, a living, breathing empire that required understanding, vision, patience. I ran my hands over the table, tracing the symbols. One caught my eye, a location on the farthest pier, marked with a small star and a note in faint script. Adam, first test. Begin here. Observe, learn, decide. My heart pounded. The first test. The first step in the game my grandfather had orchestrated. I glanced back at the crates, noticing one slightly ajar. Inside were blueprints for ships, warehouses, and what looked like specialized containers. The kind of equipment that moved cargo silently, invisibly, unseen by authorities and competitors alike. A fleet of operations hidden behind the guise of ordinary shipping. Suddenly I heard a sound. Not a shout, not a vehicle, just a soft echo, like someone had stepped on wood too lightly to notice. I froze. The fog outside thickened. The shadows inside the warehouse stretched, folding over themselves, twisting into shapes my mind didn't want to identify. And then I saw it. A figure moving near the far wall. Tall, broad shoulders, deliberate. Not my cousins. No, my cousins would never find this place. This was someone else. Someone watching. I ducked behind a crate, breath shallow, heart racing. The figure paused, scanning the room, then moved again, heading straight for the star-marked location on the map. I realized then what this test really was. This wasn't just about discovery. It was about strategy, about being careful, patient, unseen. My grandfather had built this game to measure me, to see if I could play the board while others chased the money blindly. I followed quietly, keeping to the shadows, watching as the figure manipulated small devices, opened crates and studied the maps. Every move deliberate, precise, careful. And I understood, whoever this was, they were part of the puzzle. A guardian of the empire, or perhaps a test I hadn't yet anticipated. Hours passed as I traced every route, memorized every symbol, and pieced together the first layer of what my grandfather had left behind. The warehouse was massive, far larger than any one person could fully grasp. Every crate, every plan, every tool was a step in a journey only someone patient, careful, and observant could complete. I realized my cousins, laughing at the funeral, would never even see this. They had wealth. I had knowledge, and knowledge, I suddenly understood, was power beyond money. By the time I exited the warehouse, the fog had lifted slightly. The river reflected the early moon, silver and still. I carried a small bundle of blueprints and notes, the first real keys to understanding the empire. Every step back to the car felt heavier, charged with purpose. And then I heard it again. From the distance, faint but deliberate. Footsteps along the dock. Closer now. I wasn't alone. I ducked behind a crate near the edge of the pier, peering into the shadows. A familiar laugh echoed faintly. My heart sank. It wasn't the footsteps of an enemy. It was the footsteps of someone who knew me. Someone I'd seen only once in years, but whose presence here spelled danger and revelation. Somewhere beyond the fog, the real challenge was beginning. And this time, there was no turning back. The fog had nearly lifted by the time I stepped onto the farthest pier. The river glimmered under the faint light of a crescent moon, silver waves lapping gently against the wooden posts. Everything was silent, the kind of silence that carries weight, as if the world itself were holding its breath. I held the compass in my hand. It vibrated lightly, guiding me toward the last star-marked location on the map. The brass key from the cabin burned in my pocket, almost alive, as if it knew I was ready. The warehouse doors ahead were massive, locked with the same intricate mechanisms I had been tracing for hours. But I had learned the language of my grandfather's traps, a whisper of intuition, a touch of memory from years of chess games, lessons on patience and strategy. Everything led to this moment. I inserted the brass key into the main lock. Click! The doors groaned open. Inside, the room was cavernous. Stacks of crates, models, blueprints, all the minutiae I had been studying for days, lay arranged perfectly. But at the center of it all, there was a table. A single table with a single envelope, larger than the one I had received at the funeral, embossed with the Whitfield crest. I approached. The envelope felt heavier than anything I had held so far. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, and beneath the letter a ledger bound in dark leather. I unfolded the letter first. My grandfather's handwriting stared back at me, elegant and deliberate. Adam, by the time you read this, you have already made the first moves. The others, your cousins, your greedy relatives, they chase fortune blindly. They will never understand this game. The Whitfield empire isn't money. It isn't yachts, shares, or stock certificates. It is legacy, knowledge, and influence, the ability to shape outcomes no one else sees. You are the only one I trusted to continue this. Patience, observation, and wisdom are your weapons. Use them. And remember, the strongest move is the one no one sees coming. My hands trembled. This wasn't about inheritance. This was about mastery. My cousins had wealth, arrogance, and impatience. I had insight, strategy, and foresight. I turned to the ledger. Pages upon pages of detailed operations, shipping routes, contracts, secret holdings, charitable foundations, investments hidden from every public record. The empire was vast, invisible to anyone who looked at the surface. And it had been built precisely to reward the one who could see beyond greed. I smiled. I finally understood. Grandfather hadn't left me a plane ticket to punish me. He had left me a path, a game board to play, one my cousins couldn't even begin to comprehend. And then footsteps, slow, deliberate. Preston and Mallory emerged from the shadows, their designer suits soaked from the river mist. They froze when they saw me. "No way. This place," Preston whispered, his arrogance cracking. Mallory's hands trembled as she tried to act confident, but her eyes betrayed fear. "You think you own it?" I said softly. They laughed nervously. "This is just some old warehouse, Adam. Grandpa left millions. We've got it all." Preston's voice was sharp, but it carried doubt now. I held up the ledger. "All of this belongs to the Whitfields," I said slowly, turning the pages for them to see. "But not to the ones who only chase money. To the one who understands it, to the one who plays the game the right way." Mallory stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Adam, don't be ridiculous. We've inherited the company." I shook my head. "You inherited shares. I inherited the blueprint, the real empire. Every secret, every route, every hidden foundation. It's mine to control. And the funniest part? You'll never even know the moves I make. You'll keep chasing numbers while I'm shaping the board." Preston's face turned red. "You can't do that," he shouted. I smiled faintly. "Watch me." I turned back to the ledger and began issuing instructions. Moving ships, transferring holdings, activating secret accounts, redirecting shipments, all with a few touches and codes I had memorized from the warehouse models. Within minutes, emails, confirmations, and automated systems whirred to life. The Whitfield empire, invisible until now, responded to my moves. The stock market, shipping routes, charitable donations, everything shifted in ways my cousins couldn't perceive. And as I watched their expressions, the disbelief in their eyes, I felt a thrill unlike anything money could buy. Grandfather's final lesson echoed in my mind. The strongest move is the one no one sees coming. And I had made it. They turned to each other, whispers of panic and realization flickering across their faces. The arrogance, the laughter, the superiority, all gone. They had mocked me at the funeral, but now they were witnessing the power of patience, strategy, and foresight. I closed the ledger, the weight of it finally settling in my hands. I had done what my grandfather intended. I had proven myself, and I had inherited something no one else could ever take. The true Whitfield empire. Outside, the fog had cleared. The river shimmered under the moonlight. Thunder rolled in the distance, a final applause from the storm. The game was over. And for the first time, I felt it, complete clarity, deep satisfaction, and the certainty that my grandfather had been right all along. Money could buy yachts, houses, power. But wisdom, patience, and vision, that made an empire unshakable. I glanced at the empty docks. Preston and Mallory would chase. They would try. They would fail, because I wasn't playing their game. I was playing my grandfather's game, and I had just won.